The very essence of the mental game is this. The only reason an event matters is because we make it matter.
Welcome to the Mullins Farrier podcast, where I will sit down and converse with the superstars, the overachievers, the masters of our craft. Each episode will be a deep dive into their personal philosophies, their habits, the tools they use, and the secrets to not only their success, but overcoming failure as well.
First, find somebody you can mimic, then find somebody you can stand, and then try to focus on one style until you master that style.
So if you say I can't do something, well, you're absolutely right. But if you say you're going to, you're absolutely right with that too.
People say that you shouldn't define yourself by your work. That is not true.
You know what Dave Farley does when he's, lucky enough to be at the World Equestrian Games? I'm watching other people work.
Yeah.
I don't think we do that enough.
This podcast is for all of you out there who share my passion for the job and the desire to always improve. These interviews will put you in touch with the inner workings of the role models we all want to emulate. So let's get to it.
There's only so many hours in a day, and it's a matter of what you do with them.
Today I'm speaking with Dave Farley. Dave is a well-known and sought-after farrier in the Sporthorse world. He is also well-known and respected in the farrier world as a generous educator. Many a farrier and vet have rode in the truck with Dave and his son Jay for a day of mentorship. I met Dave over dinner in Wellington one night, and I was amazed at how much information he shared. He imparted upon me decades of knowledge for the mere cost of a dinner at Chilli's. After speaking with many farriers and vets that have crossed paths with Dave, I learned I shouldn't have felt so special. He will give of his wisdom to anyone who asks. Dave's passion for the job started when he was just 7 years old, when he visited the local blacksmith and coal mine toolmaker shop in 1961. By 13, he was nailing on shoes. In the 70s, he took over a Farrier Shop at the county fairgrounds in Coshocton, Ohio, where he worked on Standardbreds. On the recommendation of a veterinarian named Dr. Gable, he then started working at Ohio State University as the resident farrier. Then, in the 80s, as the standardbred industry started to dwindle, he started working on hunter-jumper and dressage horses in Columbus, Ohio. His quest for knowledge has never dwindled, and he credits his first two mentors, Mr. Fritz Bookman and Mr. Frank McGinnis, for instilling in him this desire to learn and to pass it on. Dave's list of accomplishments is long, so here are just a few of many. He was the past resident farrier at Ohio State University, farrier for the American Quarter Horse Congress, first official farrier of the National Reining Horse Association, American Farriers Association Clinician of the Year, founding member of the Northeast Association of Equine Practitioners, founding member of both the American Association of Professional Farriers and of the International Association of Professional Farriers, as well as past president of both. Member of the International Horseshoeing Hall of Fame, he has also shod several horses competing in several Olympic Games. I was very excited to have the opportunity to interview Dave. He has a lot of well-earned wisdom we could all benefit from. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So let's get to it. So I'm sitting here today with Dave Farley, who graciously gave up some time on a Saturday afternoon to have this conversation with me. So first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for sitting down with me today, Dave.
You're very welcome, Brian.
There have been a couple times where we've sat down and had dinner together, and I was always taken aback by how much information you would share and wisdom and tips on working on horses that you've learned over the years. And it was somebody who you didn't know all that well. And then in talking with other farriers and other vets who've crossed your path, I found out that I really shouldn't feel so special. That's kind of your thing. So I was just wondering, did you learn that behavior off of somebody, off of a mentor, or is that just something that you've embraced yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that I have has came from somebody else. There's not much original with me. I really have been fortunate to have mentors, both in Mr. Fritz Bookman from a little town of Buchtel, Ohio, and Frank McGinnis from Madeira, Ohio, which is a part of Cincinnati. And both of those people are I owe everything I have to them. Mr. McGinnis told me when I first met him that every farrier has a vast knowledge, but it's doing only him good. So he himself told me, I've learned from everybody. His father was a very good farrier, but not a good communicator. So he said, I'll tell you everything I know if you'll promise to pass it on. Pass it on to somebody else.
Right.
Because you will grow and learn more if you do that. So I owe everything to Mr. Fritz Bookman and Frank McGinnis.
Wow. That's incredible. Yes, I think sometimes there is stuff that we take in and we use it every day, but if we're never asked to actually explain it or impart it on somebody else, we don't even quite understand what it is ourselves. Like it's almost an intuitive thing. And then when somebody asks you to explain it, it kind of forces you to work through the process.
Absolutely. We learn 90% of what we've got by becoming a teacher. We learn 10% from what we read, 20% of what we read and see, 30% of what we read, see, and hear. And we learn 90% of what we teach somebody else. And Mr. McGinnis was a firm believer in that, and that's why he encouraged us all to become teachers.
Well, no, that totally makes sense. I'm assuming that you maybe got your career start with him, or how did you get your start as a farrier?
No, I was blessed to have two loving parents who bought me a pony when I was 5 years old. Life was pretty good back in those days, very simple. I rode the pony every day. We had a local blacksmith who was still hanging around sharpening mine tools. I was raised in a Appalachian coal mining community. And I was very intrigued with him and watch him make his tools. So he would let me sweep a bit. When my pony's feet would be too long, he would trim them. He wasn't a very good communicator, but he also knew of Fritz. Fritz Bookman was and still is a very prominent person in that area of southeastern Ohio, who was a very, very good farrier. And only did farrier, didn't do any blacksmithing, had good tools. This guy really envied him because of that. And met Fritz. I think my mother may have asked him to help me, and he was gracious enough to let me get in his truck. That very first day I rode with Fritz, I remember everything in detail. From the time I closed the door to the smell, how when we got out, he took his wristwatch off and hung it on the gear shift. Everything about the way he stood and held the horse's foot. He had a pair of GE nippers, which I'd never seen before. Very professional man. So I knew at a very young age what I was going to do, and it all started with that pony.
Right. And you were in the right hands, obviously.
Oh, blessed to be with those people right there.
Wow, incredible. And I imagine you soaked it up just like a sponge at that young of an age. And
yeah, I was a typical little young boy in a coal mining community. You know, it was all about fishing and mini bikes, and once I got the pony, the rest of the world just kind of disappeared to me, and it was blessed to have met the two guys that changed my life.
Wow. And how old would you have been when you started?
Well, I was encouraged to trim the pony the first time when I was 7.
Wow.
Didn't have an apron. Later, they felt sorry for me and gave me an apron because it had worn out at the knees. And of course, I was small enough that they cut it off at the knees and it fit me perfect.
Perfect.
Shorten it up in the back. I took my first money at 13.
Oh, wow.
At 13, it was the first time I made money shoeing horses. Also, a very good gentleman in the area was a breeder of quarter horses. He had a pretty good size herd of horses. Fritz was doing his horses. His name is Pearl Kiefer. He's still around today. He was good enough to let me practice and hone my skills on some of his brood mares and show horses as well. So
excellent.
From there on to Frank McGinnis and traveling to Cincinnati and Northern Ohio. And yeah, it just started off.
Okay. And then I know from our conversations that eventually you ended up working, is it with Ohio State University?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how did you land yourself there, and what came of that?
Most of my life has been being at the right place at the right time. I really give a lot of credit to that, and being with the right people. I'd left the southern Ohio area and went north to Kent, Ohio, where my dad had got a factory job to get out of the coal mines. Got to work at a riding stable up there and do a lot of work there. From there, back down to the Coshocton, Ohio area, which was kind of in between the northern Cleveland, Akron area and the Athens area where I was raised. Coshocton was a good area. I had some family there. We were into barrel racing, quarter horses at that time. It was the starting of the Reining Horse Association, which is founded and started in Coshocton, Ohio. That was their first office. There's a small standardbred track there, and I got involved with the Standardbreds and was lucky enough to have a guy come in to the Standardbred shop one day who was a veterinarian at Ohio State University, Dr. Gable. And he was really into gaits. He would come over for the fairs and to train horses and to work with the trainer that we had there. And he asked me to start coming to Ohio State's one day a week, and that led to 2 and 3 and 4. And I soon learned it was very nice to work in a heated environment in the middle of the winter.
No kidding.
In Ohio, rather than in my little shop leading standardbred horses with ice balls on their feet.
Right. In your time there, I think I remember from the conversations we've had as well that you would then take on vets and teach them kind of what we do or our aspect of the job.
I was lucky enough that Mr. Gable, Dr. Gable, actually encouraged me to go on rounds in the morning. I think because he knew I was not knowledgeable enough about anatomy. I didn't appreciate veterinarians enough. And by going on rounds, case to case, stall to stall, listening to these students as well as the veterinarians that was in charge of the case, but the students explain the case, it really sparked a spark with me. It lit a fire like you would not believe. I realized how uneducated I was.
Right.
I needed to understand it. I had kind of bluffed my way through by maybe, trimming in the right direction. But once I understood anatomy and the value of radiography at that time, it changed my life. It made me appreciate it.
Changed a lot of horses' lives too.
Well, I like to think I helped some.
Now, you have also written or been featured in a lot of articles in the American Farriers Journal, and I imagine other publications as well. How did that part come to be?
At Ohio State, I was lucky enough to have a friend by the name of David Maney, who was a very good horseshoer, but he was also a journalist, very well educated, had a couple masters, couple bachelors. He was a pretty good journalist, and he wanted to hang with me to learn the horseshoeing part of it. I just loved the kid, seen potential in him, and he helped me do the first couple articles.
Oh, okay. As
well as encouraging me to invite other people down, because I liked that not only I was doing the shoeing, but I had learned from going on the rounds with the veterinarians to explain what I was doing in detail, why I was doing it, what I observed at first looking at the horse, what I felt needed to be done, and then explain what I was doing so that afterwards it ended up being what I said I was going to do. He felt that our industry had a lot of guys who would just work off the cuff and end up with a product and everyone would assume that's what the horse needed when it was really changed. But to be able to think far enough ahead to analyze that horse, analyze a conformation, and say, I think this is what this horse needs because of this conformational challenge on this limb, and end up making that shoe or modifying that shoe and end up being that, he felt that that was something different.
Right.
So more and more people started coming around, and I got my friends involved. Some of those friends of mine actually are quite famous now, some of the better clinicians, I think, in the world, and we all learn from each other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And who would be on that list?
Oh, my. Roy Bloom, maybe?
Yeah. I knew that name would come
Bobby
up.
Minker, good friends of mine that are gone now, Emil Correa, and the list is long, and I am me because of them.
Right. Yeah. It's something combining all of those great minds and
absolutely. When you get to drive and travel and shoe horses with Eddie Watson and people like that who've already gone and left us sadly. And when they left us, I'll give a quote from my good friend, Mr. Fritz Bookman. When an old farrier dies, 10 libraries burn down. So I want to try to spread my library as much as I can before I'm gone.
Yes, for sure. I think you're doing a very good job of that.
Oh, thank you.
So how did you come to start working on the higher caliber horses in the sport horse world?
Again, being at the right place at the right time. Dr. Gable, I give a lot of credit to changing a lot of things in my life, not only on the education as far as anatomy and physiology of the horse, but also in introducing me to the clients that came to Ohio State. I had good clients, and I had been around Frank in Cincinnati, who shod for the good people in Cincinnati, who were the first people to come to Florida, among the first people to come to Florida. But I'd left that because I thought I was better off going a different direction. But once I got to Ohio State through Dr. Gable and got to know the people that were coming there, they were also traveling and doing that. I was fortunate enough to friend one of the husbands who sat me down and told me one day that he felt I was a great farrier. He felt that I had a ton of knowledge, but I had no idea how to make money. And of course, that got my attention.
Of course.
And I said, I don't understand. He said, there are some people who can afford you, and you should be shoeing for the people that can afford you. Granted, all horses deserve the same type of work, but if you would shoe horses that the people can afford it, you can increase your income, you can do less work, and you can do a better job. Again, changed my life. Once I took on that client with success, they told another friend, who told their veterinarian, who told another friend. I've really never advertised, never been a big card person. It just grew from that, one thing after
Just
another.
Word of mouth.
Yes.
And reputation.
Yes.
I've found in this area that trust is a very important thing with your clients. This is probably a difficult question to answer, but do you find that there are certain ways that you can build trust with a client? Is there certain things that you maybe see other people not do that
Yes.
that would hinder that?
I think the best way to build trust in someone is first impressions and that first handshake. It means a lot. Second of all, to take the time to educate the client. What can you do for them? I'm a big believer in terms, and all farriers should have terms, and your client deserves to know those terms before you pick up a foot. And I've always been very good about explaining to my clients what my terms are. And I do that by encouraging them to ask me what they want from me. You build that trust from that very first meeting with that client, whether it's on a tack box or sitting down for a coffee. When that client tells you, and most clients will tell you the same thing, we want our horses to win. We want them to stay sound.
Right.
That's the two biggest things. As soon as you tell them, I can do that, but here's what I need from you. And they give that to you and you do the best work. They're there at the start of that. And as it grows, the trust gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right.
And you really know when they trust you when first they want you and they know you're busy, so they don't want you to shoe for anyone else. And then, a year or two down the road, they'll say, can you take on another 10? I have a good person that I do business with, sell horses or teach or whatever. They have 10 more horses and they need help. When someone tells you they need help, that's such a wonderful thing that that's a trust thing when they want you to help somebody else.
For sure.
So I think that takes time. Time is experience, and experience means you have to be there when it happens.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's the definition of experience. You have to be there when it happens. You can't read it out of a book. You can't paint it. You have to be there when it happens. That's the only way you can get experience. And that client having you there for a few years, that's experience to them, and experience is trust.
And it grows from there. Yeah. Incredible. Now, I'm sure over the years you've had instances where stuff hasn't quite gone your way, or say a vet or a trainer has had a problem or an issue with something that you've done. I've experienced it several times.
Sure.
How do you respond to those situations? I find personally, I get defensive, and then I wonder if that doesn't lower my position, right?
All humans are defensive because there is not a farrier in the world that goes out and intentionally hurts a horse. Things happen, and I've probably hurt more than anybody else. It's part of that. When I explain terms to my clients and explain why I need those 5 basic things in my business to do what I consider the best job I can do, once they understand that if a horse jerks away from you and he's a moving target, something's going to happen. I'm going to gut him. I'm going to cut his frog. I'm going to nail him. Something's going to happen.
Right.
I think then it's easier for you to explain when it does happen. And it has happened to me. I was cutting into a frog one day. No one had told me anything about this horse. This horse had had a great success. Very, very famous horse. Very great client. Client happened to be in the barn that day with other business people of theirs. For some reason, they had had an issue with this horse and they had hardened up the sole and frog on it. I had done one front foot. It was perfect. I get to the second one. It was like a piece of concrete. I had the sharpest knife of anybody in the world. And when I went to cut, it didn't cut straight back. It pulled toward the sensitive part of the frog, which is not as hard, right? The outside of the frog, insensitive frog, is very hard, almost keratinized, stone-like. Mm-hmm. And as you pull back on your knife and you pull harder and harder, as you pull it back to you, it gets deeper and deeper because it goes toward the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
So when I cut that horse to where it wasn't going to stand in bedding and stop bleeding. I knew I did it immediately, and I immediately asked the groom to call the vet.
Right.
So, of course, the owners come over. By then, thankfully, though, I had a towel close enough that I wrapped around the foot, and I told him exactly what I did. I did not keep the account, but I saved myself from telling him exactly what I did. This frog was twice as hard. I also was smart enough to pick up that piece of frog that did come off so that I could explain it to that vet later.
Right.
Now, the good thing about that is that was probably, well, I hate to admit how long ago that was. I believe it was in 91. I probably had no contact with those people for almost 10 years. And then I happened to be at a major event, a world event, and they actually came up and shook my hand and apologized for the way that went down. The horse had gotten over it. It was okay. And that they later found out when they fired that trainer for not communicating well enough that there was things going on with the horses that they didn't know. And actually the vet didn't know.
Right.
So I later got the account back.
Did you really?
And still have them today. And it's second generation now, of course. But
right.
Yeah, I work for them again. So
wow.
But at the time, it ripped my heart out.
I bet.
Even though you don't do something intentional, when you go from a soft frog to a hard frog, you should be not moving so fast that you can't realize that something could happen.
Could go wrong.
Yeah, when it's a flat-footed horse and you're struggling to keep heel on that horse anyways, and you finally got a nice, good frog that's, I don't want to say prominent, but it's a healthy frog. I learned a valuable lesson then.
Yeah, and I'm sure it stuck.
Yeah. So things do happen in our careers, and we have to admit it. We can't put all the blame on, every horse isn't bad and jerks away from you. It does happen, though. Most of the times I've heard horses with the horse that wasn't broke well enough to be shod, and I either stuck it from trying to hit a moving target, or I gutted it from the horse just pulling away. And
at the wrong time.
Yeah, I'm trying to get as much done as I can at the point. I think all farriers suffer from that.
Yes, for sure. Well, this brings up another question. What do you do in situations where you don't feel that the horse is actually trained well enough to be shod? Do you give it an attempt, or? Well,
I'm fortunate enough, and if at some point, if you talk to some people that have went shoeing with me before, I'll actually have a trainer or an owner come up and say, I hate to ask you to do this, and if you don't want to do it, I understand, because I know you don't do unbroke horses and you don't do bad horses.
Which is a good reputation to have.
Yeah. So, but I'd like for you to look at this horse. Is there any way we could work it out? Well, usually from seeing the horse, whether he's a spook or he's just, got off the boat from Europe and he doesn't have any barn stableman or whatever.
Right.
So I'll say, well, I'll have a look at him for you, but I just don't do horses. It's going to hurt me and put me out of work. Mm-hmm. And that's in my terms. When I first take on clients, my clients all know that I do not do horses that are not broke to hold a foot up for 3 to 4 minutes each foot and stand correctly. And you have to have all the 5 things that I think, clean, flat, dry, well-lit area to perfect standing horse. That's in my terms.
Which it doesn't seem like you're asking for much.
No, but those things are 20% each. So if I have a clean, flat, dry, well-lit area and I have a bad horse, if I struggle 8 hours and get my whole day and become a trainer, which we're not supposed to do, the best job I can do is 80% that day. Mm-hmm. The best job.
Right.
That's all explained to my clients before I even take them on as clients. We interview them and we talk to them and we hear what they want from us and we tell them what we can do.
That's a really great idea. And is this something that you print out
Yes.
and hand them as like a handout?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Print that out. And it starts off with that. And then I like newsletters to the clients. I like for clients to get their little, at least annually, if not semi-annually. At first, when we started doing the Natural Angle newsletter for Farrier products, every time Dan put one out, every 3 or 4 months, I was sending that out to clients. I felt that was a bit overwhelming. And farriers would get upset with me. Why are you sending them information that we're learning from? But what I found out was that clients really don't understand the depth of what we do, even though they're very simple articles. But they took that as I could do it.
Yes.
And I encourage other farriers to just do the same thing. Just take that article and include your little price change or whatever you're doing at the time for your clients, but give them something to read other than your bill is going to go up.
Right. And do you ever think that there's a point where too much education hinders what you do, or like
Yes.
too much educating the clients?
Yes. I think there is, in every breed and every discipline, there are some clients who want to be an armchair farrier.
Yep.
We all struggle that. I've been fortunate enough through the years where I've had some that I really liked as friends, but I couldn't work for them because every shoe that came out on the market, every pad that came out on the market, every nail that came out on the market, they investigate, they get on the internet, they heard things that they took as gospel because it was on the internet or it was in print. So we eliminated the client farrier relationship and kept our friendship. There's some people that will drive you crazy that way. And it doesn't mean they're not willing to pay you for the work you perform, but you find out that your profit margin goes down because the time you have to spend with that customer explaining things, phone calls, reading material that they send you, that eventually you're going to get very defensive over what the horse needs and what you're already doing. And it becomes a profit losing thing. So salvage the friendship.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yep.
and they'll use you later and won't bother you.
Right. Yeah, because they already know what where your boundaries are.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. Now, there probably isn't a good segue into this, but another conversation that we've had was about multi-farrier practices. I know that you ran one in Ohio and explained some of that to me, and I've been intrigued by the idea ever since. And in many conversations with other people, I've heard all of the ways that it can't work, and then I've learned from others ways that it does. So I was just wondering, for you, first of all, how do you sell that to the other farriers that work for you? What are the benefits to them? And then after that, how do you then sell that concept to the clients that are eventually going to use the other associates in your practice?
Right. That's a 5-day clinic.
I bet.
I'm so proud of the multi-farrier practices that I've had. I'm so proud of the farriers that have, and some still helping me, working with me. And I'm so proud of the clients I have, but it 100% boils down to you being a good communicator. If you express yourself to your clients, this is how my business runs. All of these people are associates. They're all qualified to do the work. Then they'll never question you. They may have a few questions to start with, but if you continue to build that as they are equals, you don't have a problem. I tell everybody, I can't go put every shoe on. But I will provide you with names of people who will be putting shoes on, and they are qualified.
Yes.
So they never second guess them. When it comes to the employees themselves, I found out through the years, I know almost every school personally. I think schools are wonderful. We have to have them. They are our kindergarten.
Yeah.
And that's what they are. There are some farriers that you can get out of schools who do a great job. But I always find limitations with students. And I will tell you right now and rock the world on what the problem with farrier schools are. Most of them have so much to do in a short period of time. It's impossible to teach everything. The one biggest thing that they fail on is not teaching the student the importance of how to set up and tear down a rig and how to sweep.
Right.
My grandfather told me that I can learn everything I need to know about a man by watching him sweep.
Yep.
A man that sweeps and puts his back to you is not a good communicator. A man that sweeps very fast and leaves things behind him, his work will most often reflect that. A man that will sweep with a bad broom probably isn't going to do the best work either. Yeah. And if he is using a bad broom and he takes a long time and does a very, very good job, maybe that's the guy you want to hire.
Right.
So I find that most schools, when we get that student, no matter how prepared they are to be a farrier, I'm not hiring those people to be a farrier. They're there to help me do the best trimming and shoeing job, the nailing job that I can do. And if I have to teach them for a month how to set up a truck and tear it down, and to have to tell them constantly to sweep, doesn't happen. So when I take people on in our multi-farrier practices, we have terms that the applicants have to abide by.
Right.
And all that is spelled out. I don't want to have to tell you twice. We're going to work together for a week first to see if I like you and you like me.
Yep.
I want you to show me every day how much you're watching and learning. And you're going to express that by doing it without me telling you. So I attract that person who learns by observation. Observation and osmosis, I believe, are the two most important things. Some of my most successful farriers to go into multi-farrier practice did not attend a school, but they were horsemen. They wanted to be a farrier so bad they were willing to just sweep to learn. They were quiet. They learned by observation.
Yes.
I also take the person that wants to ride with me. They are handed a notebook and a pen, and they're not allowed to ask questions all day. They are to write every question down. And I've got stacks of these pages, and some of them, there'll be some students that'll have 50 questions in a day. And most of the time at the end of the day, they'll all be crossed out.
Because they figured it out themselves.
They figured it out themselves. Not only did they figure it out, but because they wrote it down and then weren't allowed to ask questions and they watched, they comprehended it more.
You're right.
So I think that's a big success to some of the people that went on with me.
Oh, that's a good idea. In defense of some farrier schools, I have had several students from one in particular at Heartland, and they've been taught that right from day one. And that was something I've always been impressed by, because if there's ever a spare moment, there's a broom in their hand. And
perfect.
You're right. It says a lot about a person's character.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
You waste a lot of time asking somebody to do the things that you really aren't getting paid to do, or that can damage a foot when you put a foot down. That's one of my pet peeves is if a horse puts a foot down and stands on a 1/2-inch piece of foot that I just cut off and bust out the only good foot that he had.
Yep.
Oh, my goodness sakes. And especially if it's the third day and I've had to ask him 3 or 4 times.
Yep.
Every day.
An understandable frustration.
Yeah, we'll shake hands, have dinner on Friday night, and put him back on a plane.
What have been some of the benefits of the multi-farrier practice, like for the farriers that work for you and for yourself?
Well, the best benefit for me is the friendships that have been made, and also learning as much from them as I've hopefully taught them. The way that we break our work down and the way that we delegate things is that you have one job and you get very, very good at it. As you get good at it, and it's time for you to move on, you move on to other things. But we don't try to cross those work areas and jobs until you are very competent at it. Very competent at it. Maybe it's a person that is good with everything, but he struggles with horsemanship. So he's going to be sweeping a lot, touching horses, holding horses. So I think the best thing that I've gotten out of it is the friendships, because of the almost 30 that I've had through the years, almost 30 good friends and people, I'm still good friends with all of them.
Right.
I've just been blessed. No bad relationships. No, oh gosh, there he comes. Can't wait to see him. We get together at functions and at a lot of seminars and clinics I get them to stand up and become a teacher themselves.
For sure. Sometimes I equate it to almost like somebody doing military service, because our job it's difficult. Sometimes it's almost life and death. Right. And these people that you depend on with your life at times that bond is really hard to break.
Yes. Well, we spend not only our working hours with them, but then we become truck drivers with them. And then, yes. We have breakfast with them. We have dinner with them. So it's an intimate situation, even though it's, same sex or whatever, but we know everything about each other. And it's a bond that really grows. We trust that person. Yes. Like you said, if it's like a military or a firefighter, you need that person beside you to pull you out of the fire when it starts.
Exactly. Yep.
So, and if you don't feel that, and if you don't have that sense from the start, it's probably not going to work.
Yeah.
So the credit I give to my multi-farrier practices is having the right people eliminating a lot of them with our terms that we want, and bringing them in for a few days without the commitment of being there. Just come and work with us a few days and hang out and see if you like me and I like you.
Yeah.
We'll know everything at the end of that few days.
Yeah. You get better over the years, I'm sure, understanding that.
Well, and I'm also blessed to work with my son every day.
Yes.
And he's just turned, I probably shouldn't say that, but he's in his early 40s. He got his first apron when he was about 4 years old. I think he's been a full-time employee for over 23 now. He's been with me almost 40 years. He's seen it all and done it all.
Wow. And
sometimes he has a better judgment of character than I do. I've passed a few people the first day, and he said, we need another day. And by the end of the second day, I'm thinking, well, I don't know. Maybe he's right. And by the end of the third day, it's like, geez, I'm so glad he spoke up.
Right.
So, and the same goes with our shoeing. When the multi-farrier practice becomes really valuable is when you have another person or persons with you that has another eye that maybe looked at all 12 things necessary to evaluate a horse, and you only looked at first 3 and you made a gut decision.
Yes.
And when you're done trimming, you walk over and they have the shoe laid out that says, Dad, you missed the inside toe. There's the real value of the multi-farrier practice. And the learning you get from teaching and the osmosis from them also teaching you, your whole career excels at that. But before you can get to that point, you have to educate the clients on the value of that.
Yes.
And my clients know that from that very first person that told me I wasn't a good business person, also told me that why did I bring 2 guys with me when they were just standing there watching me work? It made me just do what we did here, stop and think, why am I doing that? Mm-hmm. We only have 1 horse in the cross ties. He said, Dave, your time is very valuable. You're here all day. I like you, but my dogs don't even want to be around you at the end of the day. 3 guys, 1 horse in the cross ties doesn't make any sense to me. I know you're a mechanic, so you've made mechanical decisions that have to be made. Why are you under that horse all the time? This is a very smart, very famous businessman that I really valued him. And it started me to look at horseshoeing. This is in the 80s. I started to look at horseshoeing a little bit different at that time. But I also put value on my employees to be able to do that. So all it took for me at that time was to learn how to educate my clients that they would get a better job, a little quicker, out of the barn a little quicker, but a better job and probably a longer job than me working by myself.
Yeah.
Because I'm by myself, I want to crack a horse out in 50, 60 minutes at the most. When I have somebody with me, that horse is probably in the cross ties a minimum of an hour because it's going through different stages and he's there being observed by 2 or 3 different people at the same time while all these things are going on.
Yeah. Almost like a collective mind.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Pointing out those little things that we may overlook, Sure. I've missed a few heels before and, I don't like that. And now that I'm not in charge of that,
yeah,
I don't have to worry about that. I focus on the trimming and nailing.
It's incredible to watch your system between you and your son. You can tell that there's been years that you don't even have to talk. Everything just kind of flows.
That I've heard that, and I've had a lot of people come with me and express that. But it wasn't until Red Wrenchin came with us, I don't even think it was 10 years ago, that he took a gazillion notes. And then later that day, when the shoeing was done, he pointed out things that my son and I didn't even realize that we would do.
Oh, really?
From the point of not talking, but laying out a different size shoe.
Oh, okay. Yep.
or pointing out that I didn't put a third caulk, that I needed to do that. And I would have missed it being by myself.
Yes.
To the point where now we've educated our clients. There needs to be a whiteboard. Horses need to be on there. And that way everybody in the barn knows. They know that the next time we're going, except for some barns where they have a lead groom or a barn manager that's in charge. They do have a whiteboard somewhere, but we're not in charge of it. But years ago, I actually took most of my clients and bought them all a whiteboard. And I crossed a little area off on the side, and that was the Farrier area. They could use it for their daily schedules and all. Now you see them in almost every barn.
Yeah.
But we help promote that and start that. Now my son is in charge of that. So I'm not even in charge of the horses. I know the barn we're going to, but I don't know how many we've got until we get there.
Right.
My son knows the horses. He knows the grooms. He has a good friendship with most of them and a trust. We have built a trust in not only our owners and our trainers, but we've built a trust in the grooms. We want to know what they like in their coffee. If they don't like coffee, we want to know if they're having a birthday coming up, if their boyfriend's coming to see them, let's get to know them on a little bit more of a personal note because it builds trust.
Yes.
And trust in this business, as you spoke at the start of this, there's not enough of it.
Yes.
We have to build that trust because we only see them once a month. And we want to make sure that when we leave, we've provided the service that we promised.
Now, with the whiteboard, I imagine also, you mentioned like the third cork hole or something like that. That also gives them the opportunity to add notes.
Absolutely.
As in, like, we need to make this change or.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I get the nice thing is to see the transitions in the whiteboards over the last 20 years. Because when I first put them up, it started off as just a list. And on every horse, it would say reset. Because in the owner's mind, they think that's cheaper.
Yes, I have noticed that too. Yep.
And the progression has been, it went from the resets to shoe or trim. And now it's to the point was, for instance, Charisma was done at a horse show up north, pads were applied and a question mark.
Okay.
They trust me to do whatever I think the horse needs. There was no phone call ahead of time. I don't have the calls, the concerns anymore from anybody but the vets. The owners and the trainers don't bother us. At this time in our career, I rarely ever get any feedback as far as directions on what they think the horse should have. But my owners and trainers will see me out in the arena, walking the arenas, especially when we first get to a horse show. I'll try to walk that arena or at their farm. I want to know what that footing is like. Is there a lot of sand in it? Not enough sand? Because I'm all about changing the shoes or putting a crease where it needs to be or taking a crease away. Because you, as a farrier, we need to know that horse. We need to know his job and what the right apparatus and modification we put on his foot. So now I get nothing but a list of horses. And unless the vet calls me, they leave it up to me what I do and what I put on that horse's foot.
Okay.
It's a wonderful trust.
No kidding. And how long do you think that took? Like if, say, with an individual client, how long do you think it takes before they get to that kind of level with you?
If you're working on your own and you're a one-man band, you may never get to that point. You may never get to that point because you're the lone soldier out there on your own. And you find yourself more than doing everything positive. You find yourself being explanatory a lot.
Yeah.
Why did you do this? Why did you do that? You didn't let me know, so on and so forth.
Yep.
You find yourself, when you're questioned about something, you're in a corner and you want to get out.
Yes.
So it's very hard then. Most questions that we get now don't even come to me. They'll go to my son or somebody that's working with me. Mm-hmm. And I take great pride in sitting back and listening to them explain things.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing I'm going to explain because we're all on the same page. I love working with the vets. I think a lot of this trust has come from the vet students that I was involved with at Ohio State University. I'm almost unfair to be where I am today if I was to tell you I'm here because of me. But the relationship I built with all those senior students who graduated back in the late 80s through the mid 90s are now some of the most famous vets that are in the industry. And how lucky am I that they mentioned my name and that they've built their relationship with their farriers on the relationship we had at Ohio State when they were holding horses for me.
Yes.
And I took great pride in helping them be able to learn to pull a shoe off. And that the frog can be cut too deep and that a knife does need to be correctly sharpened. So because of those relationships and building a trust with them, they've helped also promote my career through the years.
Be such a long-term thing, but it just pays dividends, I'm sure, over and over.
Over and over.
It still happens to this day that there is an animosity or mistrust between the vets and farriers. Over your career, have you seen a change to that direction where those relationships have become better? And
Yes, I have. And thank goodness. We are one of the service people that take care of the horse. We are not veterinarians. We do not have the background, the schooling, and the education that they have. They even have better knowledge of how to communicate. We need to learn from them. It has gotten much better through the years. I would be wrong in saying I haven't had disagreements with vets through the years. I have learned if I felt that the wrong apparatus was going on the horse, as long as that horse is in control and not being competed, if that horse is a layup situation, I believe time is what heals that horse more than anything. Okay. So I will say, sure, yeah, I can do that. No problem at all. I'll put on a blue suede or a red patent leather shoe. Whatever you want, it'll go on there. And then as we're walking out to the truck and there's no one else around but myself and that other person, I'll say, if that doesn't work, we ought to try a yellow pump. Mm-hmm. I think that yellow pump might be a better choice, especially if we get him back to where he's going to be hand walked or under tack.
Right.
Because I don't believe that horse is going to benefit from that shoe in a working lateral moving situation. And I think that's the big thing that's suffered, and why a lot of to go beyond the vet farrier thing is the podiatrist thing. The podiatrists are wonderful people. I want them involved with me. I want to promote a podiatrist, a veterinarian that has the skill to be able to apply a shoe. When that horse is not working, I would rather them to spend the 2 hours to make that one shoe to go on that one foot.
Right.
Because I'm not making money doing that. So I think there's a place for podiatry in our industry. And I'm glad to have them involved. I'm glad to know some of them personally and support them 100%. However, every farrier that trims a foot and applies a shoe is a podiatrist.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But if you want to take it on to the point where you want to do nothing but lameness cases, my own education through the years is I made the least amount of profit when I was doing lameness cases because of the time that had to go into it and the communication that went into it. The horse was off from 4 weeks to 12 months. I just don't have that energy anymore to put into that when I want to work on horses that are moving every day. Mm-hmm. I want to do the best job. I want to be a podiatrist on those horses that can move laterally and do their job.
Yeah. It seems you never can charge enough for your time when you get involved in those deep dive.
Right. Correct. Yeah. And I think most farriers, if they knew that to start with, there's nothing wrong with learning the podiatry part of it and the importance of support on the stay apparatus of the horse. It's there. Unfortunately, in the arenas that we're working now with the material that we have, support becomes leveraged too fast, and it will hinder the lateral movements of horses with too much support.
And that was one of the biggest takeaways from our first dinner together that I got from you. It was a real game changer when I went home. And yeah. So
hopefully in a positive way.
No, it was. And for some clientele, it was hard to get them to embrace that because they had been taught that more steel meant more support, which meant you were doing a better job. But through your conversation, I then researched it more, and I got to the point where I couldn't even compromise enough to keep those particular clients happy. They had to go.
Sure.
But yeah,
it was all for a better business for you down the road.
For sure. Yeah. And you go home feeling better knowing that you are doing right by the horse, not necessarily what the client wanted, but you knew that your knowledge base was stronger than theirs in that particular area.
Sure.
You were doing the right thing.
I go back to the guy that told me I was a terrible business person. He told me that he hired me because I was the best farrier. But if I wanted anything done with software, to hire him.
Yes.
That I was never going to be a software person.
Yeah.
And that helped me sink in a little bit. I want to be the best that I can be, but I only want to do what I'm capable of doing. I refer everything else out.
Yes.
I don't even like to do quarter cracks if I can keep from it. I'd rather refer that to somebody else
that specializes
in that, and he can come in and do a much better job, take the time and charge for his time because he knows how to charge for his time.
Right. Yeah.
Where me, I cut corners too much, and my wife says, "Oh, you only did 3 horses today?" Well, yeah, but one was a quarter crack. It took 3 hours. Well, how much bait can you buy with that?
Yeah. No, I think in many conversations I've had with other farriers, that is one area when we do start to put products on, such as like Equibond or something for a quarter crack or whatever, that there's almost this sense that we can't charge for it. It's an expensive product for us to purchase.
Absolutely.
And then we're afraid to pass that on to the client.
Right. There has to be a knowledge. We have to be able to do things if we're there alone and by ourselves. There has to be enough knowledge for us to do the podiatry type work. But whether we want to do that consistently on a daily basis is what we have to weigh out. And then for my business, it didn't weigh out financially.
Yeah. This would lead into another question. For somebody who's starting this business, they've graduated from a school or they're thinking about apprenticing with somebody, what advice would you give them?
Ride with you. Ride with somebody who is a sponge, who's trying to learn as much as they can or has already learned as much as they can. Find the person who has already achieved what you want to achieve in life. Do whatever it takes necessary to be with that person as much as possible, whether it's sacrificing a day a week to ride with that person or to work for them or to have conversations with them, and trust what they're saying. However, stay away from the person that has the attitudes that you don't like or has not achieved it. Success is earned. So try to find someone who has achieved success, and they will save you many, many years of education.
Right. That's good. For somebody else who's been in it for a while, say gone their own path, and maybe they're 5 or 10 years into the job, would there be something you would tell them?
Sure. You know what Dave Farley does when he's, lucky enough to be at the World Equestrian Games? I'm watching other people work.
Yeah.
I don't think we do that enough. I think once we become what we feel is accomplished and we have some success and we have our toys and we have our retirement plan, I don't think we look at things through others' glasses enough. I think the continuing education, the mentee mentorship thing should go on for life.
Yeah.
And if you're truly involved in it, your hobby will only keep you busy so long to where you'll feel you've gotten into that corner again and you're trying to defend yourself out. Maybe you need to go ride with your best buddy. And how do you do that? What type of shoe are you using? What type of nail are you using? And you leave those days when you're riding with somebody else, you leave those days inspired and energetic.
Yep.
And you feel like you just got out of school again. You can't wait to
to apply some new things.
That's right.
Yep. No, I found that every single time. And it is hard because I think sometimes we have this idea that if somebody sees you in somebody else's truck, that you maybe don't think you're worthy or that you're degrading yourself in some way because you're supposed to be a rock star who knows everything to begin with.
And I hear that and I see that mostly in the local areas.
Yeah. I
find that it never really crossed my mind before until I heard it from one of the people that take on some of my work in the summer. I work less in the summer, more in the winter. I try to do less in the summer, just the opposite of everybody else. That he was bragging to this particular client that he was coming down to work with me. That client actually approached me and said, can I get you to do me a favor? Do you know what hotel he's staying at? I'd like to pay his hotel bill.
Oh, wow.
I'd like to give him a per diem, but I don't want him to know because I don't want to. I'm so happy that he's working with you. And I said, why? He's a better farrier than I am. Well, maybe so, but he's down there learning what's going on, what the new stuff is. We know you are the guy with the new products. We know that you're the guy that, is kind of out in front a little bit. I'm not out in front any more than anyone else. I just know the right people. That's it. But I thought that was so cool that the owner would offer to subsidize this guy.
Okay.
To be in this environment instead of complaining, always leaving, and there's no one home to put shoes on. Yep. Well, he'd learned from me that he has other people to put those shoes on. They're not going to miss him one step.
Yep.
So, yeah, it works.
In certain clinics, I've noticed when people post on social media that they are attending clinics, and I even go to a school once a year down to Heartland, and it's amazing how many of my clients, at first I used to kind of keep it secret, and then eventually I didn't, and it's amazing how many clients actually commend me for it later.
Sure.
Yeah. They appreciate that you are learning something. Now, I think in the past, maybe there was a bit of an attitude that my guy knows everything and that's it. But I think with this world of where knowledge is constantly being accrued and we're learning new things all the time as the technology gets more advanced, I think people recognize that now.
I told my clients a few years ago that in the next 10 to 15 years, there would be more technology and education, continuing education, than the past 100 years in farriery. And they would all go quiet. And after that absorbed, and they said, well, wow, What's that mean? I said, that means I have to go find out the new stuff and the technology.
Yep.
Oh, good idea. So they never question me when I say, I'm going to the summit, I'm going to the convention, I'm going to do this clinic.
Yeah.
Again, communication with your clients. Communication.
You're educating them that you're being educated.
Right. And we all are. When we quit being educated, we become very stagnant, very defensive, set in our ways, and we have bad attitudes.
Yeah. I have witnessed that. This is a very good segue into the association that you helped found, the AAPF. What can you tell me about how that concept came to be, and then where do you think it's heading?
Well, it wasn't my concept. I'm just one of the founding board members.
Okay.
Again, like everything in my life, I surrounded myself with very smart people. And all of us, we really feel strongly about all the associations. We support them. We're still members of the other associations. We support them, speak at their conferences, want to promote their continuing education because they are doing a great job with that.
Right.
But we looked at what had been done in the past. Like all good businesses, I think association is a nonprofit business.
Yep.
Okay. So what can you do as a nonprofit business for the people that are paying their membership? And I think where our industry lacked was not having enough open mind. I think there was enough going on, but you had to be members of everything to get everything.
Right.
So how could we find a place that served not only an appetizer, but served a good main course and had dessert also? So all of us being parts of the other organizations, the other associations through the years, we said, let's just take a different approach. Let's support them. Let's really kind of encompass them and kind of make them a part of us by supporting them. So that's what this association does. It supports them, and we're not doing anything that they're doing. We're doing some things that are kind of new stuff, but it's down to earth, real stuff. It's encompassing every part of the farrier industry. We try to do as much as we can for the manufacturers. We try to help them, whether it's through promoting their products or doing some research for them. We're very supportive of the people that support us. So that's what we're doing. We're very encompassing, very open-minded, very inclusive to look at everything, learn from everything, have it available for anyone that wants to learn it. But it's not just everything out there on the internet.
Yeah.
We tried to funnel it down a tunnel that there's light at the end of the tunnel, but we have to walk to get there.
Right.
So that's why we started this.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that there are actually other associations kind of linked to that as well, right? The
Yes.
IAPF?
We started as the AAPF.
Okay.
We went on to the CAPF, American Association of Professional Farriers, Canadian Association of Professional Farriers, and now we have the International Association of Professional Farriers. I don't like boundaries. I don't like the differences between countries. I think horses' feet are horses' feet. I don't care where you're at, whether you're in the desert or you're in the tundra or whether you're in South America. I think the world needs to know more about good horseshoeing. So I think we're all international in a way. And that's my vision for the future, is let's all come together and do one thing.
Right.
Let's educate about everything that there is with the horses. It's not to me to give my opinion on a product or a different style of shoeing and to say that's wrong. There is not one way. If I've learned one thing in my life, it's that there are so many different ways to shoe horses that there could be movies made about it. Long movies.
Right.
Every day for an hour, 5, 6, 7 days a week for 100 years. You would never get tired of it. But what way works for you? Where do you shoe? Where do your horses work? What kind of work do they do? What are the best products for them? Well, guess what? There's new products all the time. There's better manufactured products all the time. There's better tools all the time. And we owe the owners a certain amount of education to prove to them that we are qualified to do that work.
Right.
So that's what we're about with this association, is to get to that end user, to explain to them how we are involved in continuing education and that we want to learn about their breed and their discipline.
Okay. In doing that, are you approaching the different equine associations as well?
Yes, as well as they're approaching us. They see that we have our foundation credentialing that we have now, which has been very well received. And we moved on to the hunter jumper credentialing, and we're going to go on down the road. I'm working on one as we speak. It's going to go to as many different discipline and breeds as want us. Now we've created a little bit of a smorgasbord, and there's a lot of people coming up. Now we have to keep our bar of food filled and be able to give them what they expect from us.
Right.
And what those people want is they want their farrier to know about their discipline.
Right.
Not just about the shoeing part of it. They think their farrier should know what that horse does for a living. We have people involved in this association that's felt that from the start. We need to provide that for the end user. Provide the education for the farrier, of course, but also provide that farrier with information they need to know about that horse's job.
This portion of the podcast is called the Stratum Victoria. These are the short answer, surface stuff questions, but it's okay if the guest wants to go deeper. The stratum victorium is the outermost layer of the hoof wall. The thin layer of cells, also known as the hoof varnish or the stratum externum. Maybe you just learned a new word. I hope you learned some interesting facts about our guest too. Enjoy. So your most favorite book that you would most gift to others or that you've shared with other people?
Everything you need to know about women.
Okay. Your favorite brand of work boots?
Slip-ons.
Okay.
Yeah. Cheap, easy to get in and out of. If they crap in them, you just throw them aside and grab another pair.
Right.
Yeah. If horses step on my feet through the years and have pinned me to the ground, so I want something I can pull my foot out of now. It's for history and injuries.
Okay, that makes sense. So are they actually steel-toed or no?
No. I had a problem with a steel-toed shoe. I'd owned 2 or 3 pair of them. Had a pair on one day. I was doing some of the big draft horses at that time, big Percherons. Came down, stepped on my toe, caved a toe in on my toes, and had to go to the hospital to get it cut off.
I could understand why you would want to put that back on your foot.
No, I'd rather miss a toe.
Okay.
Than 8 hours pain.
Right. Your favorite make of rasp?
That's a very unfair question because I'm a big promoter of Balata.
Okay.
And I've been a top sharp guy for a long time. However, I'm about to switch to a new rasp that Balata is coming out with. I'm very excited about it. Been able to play with that a little bit. It's a little wider, not as long as the great big long ones, but it's a little wider. Not on the market yet, so you'll have to ask me about that again later.
Okay, sure. To be continued.
To be continued.
Your favorite rounding hammer?
Bloom.
Okay.
Light. I use 1.5 pound rounding hammer.
Do you?
Yes.
Okay.
And more propane.
Yep. Just keep them hot.
I wish I would have been that smart 30 years ago.
Your arms probably wouldn't hurt as much.
One of the best tips that I can give people is a lighter hammer, hotter fire.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Gas or diesel truck?
Gas truck, because you will purchase and operate it on 40%.
On 40%.
Yeah. Engine compared to engine, price of engine.
Yep.
And then what you pay for the fuel down the road.
Yep.
Soon gas trucks will be coming with a 200,000 mile warranty.
Yeah.
I have one sitting in my driveway right now with over 200,000 miles on it. And I've saved $41,000 in fuel by having a gas over a diesel.
Really? Okay.
Figure it out sometime.
Yeah. I'm going to have to. Your favorite pastime after work?
Fishing.
Okay.
Grandkids.
Yeah.
My wife.
All good answers. The next thing on your bucket list?
Next thing on my bucket list, spend a little time with a couple of friends, farrier friends.
Okay.
Get educated.
Yep. Your favorite brand of keg shoe?
I don't like to call them keg shoes. I think they're manufactured shoes. I'm a care cart guy all the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then leather or synthetic pads?
Leather, no question.
I knew you were going to say that because of the conversation we had a couple of years ago, and you changed my thinking on that as well. Ideal number of horses to shoe all around in one day?
By myself or with somebody?
Both.
By myself, 4. With one person, 6. With 2 people, 10.
Okay.
And you do the same amount of work. Myself, the same amount of work.
On either of
Whether
those.
it's 4, 6, or 10.
Okay.
That's a whole clinic.
Yes, I was just thinking that. Surface form questions, and I'm thinking, man, we could really go deep on some of these. Favorite inspirational quote?
Work smarter, not harder.
Oh, what brand of accounting software do you use?
Forge Ahead. I Forge Ahead, I'm sorry.
Social media, do you use it, and what would be your preferred social media platform?
I don't use it enough. I watch it.
Okay.
I'm a Facebook guy because I think farriers get too farrier tunneled, and I don't think there's enough family and balance in life. And if you go to certain sites, you see those ones who have less balance in their life.
Yeah.
So, but I do like Facebook. I think it's the problem with Facebook, it limits you to 5,000 people, and that's been a struggle for me. I've lost a couple relationships because they've been trying to friend me for a couple of years and
and couldn't.
No. So I think I love the internet for continuing education. I just don't have the time for it that I did a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I limit myself now to just 30 minutes a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's admirable. It's hard. It's
very hard. Now that's not including my client relationship before. I'm looking at x-rays constantly. I'm answering emails and all that, but the social part of it, I keep it to 30 minutes. I want to get through my birthdays. I want to thank all my clients for what they've done and congratulate them on their wins and keep up with my grandkids.
Yep. Do you have injury insurance?
Disability insurance?
Yeah.
And medical insurance? Yes. Have it all. Liability? I think every farrier needs it all.
What do you use as your planner or agenda?
I use many different things. I still have a written daily planner, and I use my iPhone, iPad, and Mac. We're on the cloud, so we're all connected. My son, myself, my wife, we're all connected on the cloud. What we do is the other person gets immediately.
Right. So, and then you can all keep track of it.
Everybody.
Yeah.
I have more minds keeping track of me than me.
You won't get away with much that way.
No.
Favorite method of soothing aches and pains?
Soothing aches and pains is to have an associate.
That's a good answer.
I really believe if you can delegate and you can share, it's our life as a farrier is like a low-souled horse. If you expect that foot to stand on a weak, thin, crumbly, wet wall, it's eventually going to collapse. And as a farrier working by yourself, that's you're at.
What you're doing.
If you take that foot and you throw a pad on it, or you can throw a pad on that's a frog pad, and then a nice wide shoe, it's going to come back and stay strong for the rest of its life. If you take those things away from it individually, it'll eventually collapse again.
Right.
Let's all think about that a little bit.
Yeah. Good answer. Favorite brand of jeans?
Wrangler.
I get that answer the most.
I think they should sponsor your podcast.
Yeah, maybe. I'll talk to them about that. Your favorite genre of music?
Bluegrass. Grassroots, Appalachian bluegrass.
Okay. And
I love it all, but I connect with it.
Okay. Yeah. From your root. And your favorite drink?
Water. It's changed through the years. Really liking water right now.
Yeah.
However, I have a friend, Larry Rumsby, that makes a really mean margarita.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
I'll have to look them up for that alone. Do you work out?
No. I've not been fortunate enough to ever have the time. Now that I do have the time, I work my wrist out casting.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm big into the fishing.
Yeah. And do you meditate?
I do. I try to meditate in the mornings. It's by myself. I've done it my whole life. Most people, including my family, have no idea I do it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I really focus on the positive things. I also give thanks for the people that have put me here. When I meditate, I try to really it's not much time, but I put as much deep thought into it as anybody would.
I imagine if you've done it that long, you probably do feel it's beneficial.
Well, if you take that time, you learn that you can, the older you get, the more you realize you can accomplish things in less time, but you have to take that time. Mm-hmm. It only has to be a few minutes.
Yeah.
And I think something happens when you give thanks.
Lastly, what would you have been if not a farrier?
Architect.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinated with the mechanics, drawings, support. I've been totally fascinated. If not that, probably a musician.
Okay.
Yeah, my father was into music, and I love what it does for people.
Yeah, it's incredible. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate
this.
Oh,
the honor was mine. Trust me, I wish I was 30 again and I could still have, a 6-man multi-farrier practice and still able to take on as many people. The older I get, the more I'm trying to do work on that bucket list.
Yeah.
And through the last couple of years, I've had to cut down on as many people as I have ride with me in the past.
Right.
Just the balance of life thing.
Oh, for sure. You've put a lot of time into educating other people, and
Only because people gave it to me. I just want to give back what's been given to me.
well, it's an honorable thing. So thank you, and you're doing it still with things such as this. So I appreciate
You're very welcome.
it.
But you are the future, and everybody listening to this is the future. I'm planting some seeds with you, but take it and do more miraculous things and make more money than I have and have a better balance in life and retire earlier. I'm just giving back what's been given to me. You are the future.
Well, we'll all strive for that. Thank you very much, Dave.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Before we finish up, I wanted to say a few words about a special project to me called Foot for Thought. Just over a year ago, my friend Dr. Andrea Dubé approached myself and 4 other farriers, Barney Cummings, Kathy Lesperance, Mark Struthers, and Justin Argent, about starting a project together. She wanted to learn more about what it is we farriers do, and to be able to create a series of clinics where vets and farriers could work and learn together while focusing on specific lamenesses or equine podiatry issues. We all understood the need for a safe space, where vets and farriers could let their guards down and feel free to ask questions they wouldn't normally ask in front of clients out of fear of looking bad. The group came up with the name Foot for Thought. We ran our first clinic and had a relatively good turnout. Mostly farriers, but some vets. Then we started a closed Facebook group where vets or farriers could post cases they were working on and seek out the opinions and advice of others. The closed group ensuring, once again, that the discussions were out of the public realm to ensure a safe space. It started to grow. People joined up from all over North America. The next clinic grew too. More vets, more farriers, more discussion. We started broadening our base and having vets and farriers from well outside our area come in to lead the clinics. It has been and continues to be quite the journey. The keenness of everyone who participates is palatable. I'm proud to be part of such a great collaborative group that is doing so much to help equine professionals help out the horses in their care. If you are a vet, farrier, chiropractor, or equine massage therapist, please send a member request to the Foot for Thought Facebook page. Or you can message me directly, and I'll get you on the email list for upcoming events and special announcements. And that concludes this episode of the podcast. Until we meet again, take care of yourselves and each other out there. Thank you very much for listening.